Hey, Sean, talking about the Gnarbox 2.0 today. I've had this for about a year, and I was asked recently, is it something that I would recommend people buy? And so I wanted to quickly walk through the 4 huge pros and the 2 cons in making your decision on whether or not the Gnarbox 2.0 is right for you. First and foremost, you need to understand that I'm a videographer mainly. That's what I do professionally, and then I do shoot photography recreationally on the side. Sometimes I shoot behind the scenes photos, but I don't own a laptop and I don't want one. I like my kit to be very lean. That's what makes me unique as an operator, is I can go places and do things that a lot of people can't because my kit is designed to be very, very lean in most cases. So bringing a laptop a lot of times means bringing an extra bag or having bags that can't be tossed around quite as cavalier as I may want to, just because of how delicate they are. So for me, this device made a lot of sense, and I was excited for it and waiting for it to come out, and now I've had it for a year, and these are my thoughts. This device has 4 main pros for me. Number 1, it's speed. This thing backs up really quickly, and I'm comparing this to both using a computer natively and using a Western Digital My Passport Pro. And when I say it backs up quickly, I mean the setup as far as going from memory card to backup. This is the fastest out of any device, and once that's in there, the actual transfer speeds are really, really good. And if I have 3 or 4 cards, and I usually shoot on 64 or 128 gigabyte SD cards, by the time I've loaded out, after usually 45 minutes to an hour, all of my footage is backed up in 4 places. And that to me is an indispensable level of security and comfort that I get, which is enabled by this device and how quickly it does its job. There were several occasions where I was using the Western Digital My Passport Pro, and it took so long to do backups, and you couldn't really tell how far along the backup was, where I was carrying this spinning hard disk around with me, carefully waiting for it to finish, not knowing how much longer it had. I hated that. This does not have that problem. Not only is it super fast, but if it took long because we're backing up Red magazines or something, it's solid state, so I don't have to worry about jostling it or anything. It's going to get the job done. Number 2 pro is usability. The LED screen makes it really, really simple, especially compared to the Western Digital, where it just had 4 LED lights that sometimes worked. This is really straightforward. I can put in a bunch of presets in the app, which I've done, and so when I put in an SD card, I can have it with a couple clicks in the menu, go to a folder later where I've got my A cam, my B cam, my drone, my audio, and I can have all my footage sorted out for me wherever it gets backed up. And that is a really, really useful feature. And especially even compared to a laptop, by the time you connect your dongles and have yourself set up and you've got your screen, it takes up space. And for usability, I'm going to give the edge to this tiny little device, which if I only want one backup to the internal drive, is this big, and I can throw it on the car seat next to me. I can, throw it on the seat on the airplane next to me or in the pouch, and it's going to do its job perfectly. And you can't say that of a laptop. And I did not have the reliability I needed from the Western Digital, which brings me to number 3, which is reliability. This thing does 2 things very reliably. Number 1, it turns on and operates. And I've had issues with laptops in the field. I've had issues with the Western Digital. And for me, this thing always turns on, it always performs its duties, and it tells you what it's doing. I've never had issues with it crashing or freezing or glitching or having any issues whatsoever. This thing does exactly what it says it does, and I've never had it do anything other than that for me. The other part of reliability is the actual backups on this are really, really strong because it does checksums, and now they just added the 64 hash checksum protocol. It's really, really reliable. And now I've had dropped frames and backups from backing up directly to a laptop. And unless you're using a software like ShotPut Pro or something where you're doing your checksum verifications, just backing your stuff up onto a couple hard drives without proprietary software I've had issues with that on laptops. I've had issues with the Western Digital. I've never had an issue with this. Every file that I've ever backed up through this has worked perfectly. No dropped frames, no corruption, no lost data, no anything. This makes a reliable file, and it does it every time. So reliability is my big third one. Fourth and finally, this is the fastest path to redundancy that I've seen. If you've got a DIT, if you've got a big workstation where you're doing this, this isn't going to be a huge lifesaver for you. But for me, being able to plug in an SSD to both sides of this, there's two USB-C ports, and I typically plug in a Samsung T5 and a G Technology G Mobile drive. Between those two drives and the internal hard drive, with a few clicks and putting the SD card in here, I leave with 4 copies. I've got the SD card, I've got the internal and 2 external hard drives, all of which are solid state, all of which can back up as I throw this thing in a bag or set it on my cart as we're bouncing around and moving through hallways. This thing provides redundancy so easily that I have this sense of security and comfort that I don't get from any other solution I've ever had for backing up. Now, it's clear I really like this thing. There are 2 drawbacks for me so far that I've seen. Number one, the Wi-Fi connectivity on this I have to set every single time, where if I turn it off and turn it back on, it doesn't know that I'm at home. And even though I've typed in the password 1,000 times, it doesn't know my home Wi-Fi or wherever I am. And so every time you turn it on, you have to set your phone to connect directly to this. And then after you connect to it, tell this what the actual network you want it to connect is, then take your phone and disconnect it from this Wi-Fi onto the home Wi-Fi, and then reconnect, and then you can update the firmware and things like that, and manage all your files, and it can upload automatically to Dropbox or Frame.io, and there's some really cool features built into it. But every time I turn this thing off and turn it back on again, I have to go through that process. Even if I do it right now, if I turned it off and turned it back on, I would lose my home connection and I'd have to go through both those steps again. So that's an annoyance that I've run into. But when I'm in the field, I'm connecting directly to it, so I'm not doing that anyway. So for most of my use of it, I'm just using it as a backup tool, and that does not present a problem. What does present a problem is, number 2, this thing needs some serious power to charge. And even though it charges with USB-C, you need a pretty beefy charger, and it comes with the charger it needs, obviously. I did not know that, and I did a trip to Minneapolis where I brought one charger. I was very excited. We couldn't check any luggage. It was a really, really lean trip. I couldn't bring anything that I couldn't take on my back. And so with my Sony Alpha cameras, my D&D microphones, my ALMW light, and my Gnarbox, everything could charge via USB-C. And so on the second day, I was excited to be able to charge everything overnight with my one charger without having to bring a bag of chargers. But when I plugged it in, I used like an iPad USB charger, and it didn't give enough power to even trickle charge to keep this thing alive. And so this ended up dying partway through the second day after using it for a full day and a half. So I've learned since then that you need to use a bigger, beefier power block. And now I bring just that one, and that will still power my camera, my microphone, and my lights and anything else. But I didn't know that I needed that, the lowest common denominator was going to be the power that this thing draws to be able to charge. So those are the only 2 real drawbacks that I've run into while using it. Now, again, this thing can do a lot of things like editing photos and sorting things and doing all your ratings before you import them. You can do a whole lot of this with video editing and LumaFuge software or LumaForge software on the iPad and the iPhone. But I don't use it for any of that. I use it to be my best friend for backups and nothing else. And so if you're looking for a review about how to sort all your photos on the field and how to look like the commercials where you're editing all your video on an iPad before you even get home and upload it to your system, this isn't the review, and I'm not going to talk about that. I'm here to say that if you don't use a laptop, or if you need a really, really durable solution, this device is absolutely worth its weight in gold for the security that it gives you, the flexibility it gives you to customize your backups and label things while you're in the field before you even get home. And it does it in a way that is so reliable that I've never had a problem. So if you do use a laptop, if you do have a DIT, if you're doing those sort of things, this may not be as much of a game changer for you, and I wouldn't recommend buying it. It is $500, $600, depending on the size hard drive you get in it. But if you're an operator who wants a really, really easy way to reliably back up your footage in the field, and you can stick your SD cards directly in here, but with the adapters, you can also connect any card reader, and we've backed up Red magazines through this thing onto 3 externals really, really quickly. This thing is flexible and powerful, but if you're already bringing a laptop and doing all that stuff anyway, it's not going to be as much of a help as it is for if you're trying to operate without some of those things. So those are my thoughts. That's what I use it for, and I love it. But if you have a different use case, you may not find it quite as useful as I did. Let me know how you use it. If you have one, if you're thinking about getting one, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments, and I'll do my best to test and answer it. That's all I got. Thank you for watching. See you later. Bye.